Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I ask the Minister to make a statement on Yemen?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my right honourable friend, the member for Bournemouth East, for raising a question on this very important matter at this time. Mr. Speaker, the ongoing conflict and humanitarian situation in Yemen remains a challenge for the international community. The new Houthi offensive in Marib has only made our efforts to bring peace and stability even more difficult. Nevertheless, we continue to work with the international community to find a peaceful resolution, with an emphasis on the political process. The UK is playing a leading role in responding to the crisis in Yemen through both our humanitarian response and our diplomatic influence. We actively support the UN Special Envoy Martin Griffiths in his work to reach a political solution, and we pay tribute to his tireless efforts to bring about peace. Mr. Speaker, the UK has pledged over £1 billion in aid to the humanitarian response since the conflict began. My right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, and I have regular calls with partners on Yemen. Recently, the Foreign Secretary has spoken to Secretary Blinken in the new United States administration and the Saudi Foreign Minister. Last month, I spoke with the Yemeni Foreign Minister to offer my condolences after the attacks at Aden Airport. The UK has also used its role as the penholder at the UN Security Council to help move the Yemen peace process forward, working with our partners and allies at the United Nations to ensure Yemen continues to be a top priority for the international community. Mr. Speaker, we welcome the recent statement by President Biden to instigate a review of US foreign policy towards Yemen. Our ambassador in Washington has already spoken with the new US envoy to Yemen, and I also welcome reports that the US may reverse the previous administration's designation of the Houthis as foreign terrorist fighters, and the UK has engaged closely with the US administration on this very matter. However, we must not ignore the Houthis' actions. These include the use of children and sexual violence as tools of war, the persecution of religious minorities and attacks upon civilians. On 30th of December, the Houthi attacked Aden Airport, killing 27 civilians and injuring over 100 others. We must address the Houthi sense of impunity to make the peace process meaningful, and this must extend to other actors in the region, notably Iran. I note the US decision to pause its arms exports whilst it reviews its policy towards Yemen, and I can reassure the House that the government takes its own export responsibilities extremely seriously and assesses all export licences in accordance with strict licensing criteria. Mr. Speaker, the political settlement is the only way to bring about long-term peace and stability in Yemen and to address the worsening humanitarian situation. This government remains committed to bringing an end to the conflict.
I call to Tobias Howard, who has 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker. Last week, President Biden gave his first foreign policy speech, reversing many of the isolationist policies of his predecessor and seeking to re-engage with like-minded allies in order to revisit major global hotspots neglected by the West. And the complex civil war in Yemen was named specifically, now entering its 7th year. Today, it's the largest humanitarian catastrophe in the world. The US President has appointed a new envoy, as we've just heard, and will end support for the offensive operations and connected arms sales, seeking to re-establish the conditions for a ceasefire and fresh peace talks. The war in Yemen is complicated. The country never properly stabilised following unification in 1990, and President Hadi has struggled to handle corruption, unemployment, tribal disputes, and most critically, separatist and extremist agendas pursued by the Houthis and Al-Qaeda, respectively. The Houthi advance into the capital in 2014 led to UN Security Council resolutions that legitimised a Saudi-led military coalition to support President Hadi. And despite many rounds of talks, some of which I was involved with as a former minister, 6 years on, we are no closer to peace. Indeed, conflict has spilled out into a wider proxy war. So the US reset is to be very much welcome. And this poses our first big test of what global Britain means in practice. In that spirit, can I encourage the UK to fully align ourselves with our closest security ally, to end similar arms exports connected to the war and reverse the cuts to our overseas aid budget? And, as the UN Security Council penholder on Yemen, could I recommend, firstly, the UK offers to host a UN summit that looks at political options for peace, and secondly, the UK is willing to commit British forces to any UN stabilisation effort that may be required once a political settlement is reached. Mr. Speaker, this is a real opportunity for Yemen to end the war. I hope the Minister can confirm today that Britain's resolve to play a leading role.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my right honourable friend for the thoughtful contribution he's made and the work that he did as the Minister in this portfolio. I can absolutely confirm that the United Kingdom's desire to bring about a peaceful settlement in Yemen is unwavering. We will continue to work with our international partners, both the United States and also regional partners, to bring this about. He puts forward a number of specific points. The UK has, indeed I have on a regular basis, spoken with the UN envoy to Yemen, Martin Griffiths, and we fully support his work. What ways to bring together the various parties around the negotiating table we will look at in the future. I note his idea about a UK-hosted summit. He will understand I can't commit to something like that at this moment, but I do welcome the thoughtful contribution that he's made. Similarly, he would completely understand it would be inappropriate for me to speculate about what a military intervention might look like, but I do make the point that the Saudi-led coalition has been is something that was mandated at the UN Security Council, and as he said, it's something that he worked on during his tenure. But we also note that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia does have a legitimate right to defend itself against attacks, and we do completely condemn the attacks both within Yemen at Aden Airport, as I mentioned, but also cross-border into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Let's head up to Wigan, where I will call Shadow Foreign Secretary Lisa Nandy, who has 2 minutes participating virtually. Lisa Nandy.
Mr. Speaker, we are not a bystander to this conflict. UK arms training and technical support sustains the war in Yemen and the worst humanitarian